Welcome, friends. And frankly, a little nervous about this show today. I have this little internal response that whenever I feel afraid of something, I do it. That might sound really weird, but generally it pays off. Generally, in my career, when I'm like out of my comfort zone and I'm doing something I'm nervous about, it leads to better things. And this show is one of those things. And it's going to require me to be like honest and vulnerable, and I'm just not great at that. But I've got my friend Dana Malstaff with me today to help me along. She promised she would carry me through this. So before we get started, I want to remind you that our show is brought to you by Brevo. And isn't that great that Brevo has just been so good to us and sponsored us for so many years now? And Brevo is so cool. You can have a unified view of the customer journey in one easy to use platform, and it is so easy to use. You have access to intuitive marketing and sales tools such as marketing and sales automation, marketing campaigns over email, SMS, WhatsApp, chat, and much more. And you don't even have to pay anything. You could try it for free at brevo.com/marketing companion. If you do decide to sign up, use the promo code companion to get 50% off your first 3 months. Now I can't delay the podcast anymore. So so Dan and I got to have dinner together with some friends. Um, we were in San Diego. We were both speakers at Social Media Marketing World, and we had a great dinner with a couple other people. And then Dana turned to me and confided in me with some things going on in her life, and it just seemed so sad. And I reached out to Dana later, and I said,
So
"Oh,
here we are.
so here we are." So I just it was like, oh man, I just feel. I was just here's what was happening. Papa Bear was coming out. I
hmm
said, "Oh, Dad, I just feel so bad that you're suffering right now." And Dana wrote me back. She said, "Well, maybe we should talk about that on our next show together. How do you work through pain? Not necessarily physical pain. It could be physical pain, but how do you work through crises?" And I've had my share of those in my life, in varying flavors. And I've had some success in doing that. I have some strategies to do that. We can talk about today. So, how do you want to start this thing?
Well, and I think there's a
I'm
distinction because
nervous.
it's not just how do you deal with hard times. It's like how do you actually keep your business running?
How do you
How do
run
you
a business?
actually stay
Right,
present with your kids? How do
right.
you right? Okay, so I'll give a tiny bit of context because
Yeah.
he sounds like I was like rocking back and forth in the corner. The fact is I didn't speak this past year. I emceed a whole stage an entire day. My brother was in town. I talked with people. I went out and had dinners. And it just speaks to the relationship that Mark and I have, where he looked at me and he was like, "What is wrong with you?" Because we know each other enough for him to know that my eyes were sad when the rest of me was. And the fact is I've had a 7 year relationship with a partner that I love very dearly, and we had decided the week before that event to no longer know each other. Basically, that it just wasn't. We
Yeah.
needed to not be in each other's lives.
Yikes.
Our
Yikes.
goals were our companionship was wonderful, but our goals were different, and what we wanted,
Mhm.
and it just doesn't. It's like someone wanting kids and someone not. It would be that
Yeah.
kind of big things that are different. But in addition, when I started my business, I don't know, 2, 3 years within starting my business, my dad died a very slow, year long, terrifying, like until he was skin and bones and then just went into a coma kind of death.
Phew.
Got a divorce right after that. Last year, my mom got cancer. Thank God,
Mhm.
the best kind of cancer you have, which was easily curable. She's doing great. My ex-husband last year moved in and blended a family. I did not know how much therapy that was going to take me on like my kids going to a new mom with a new like brothers and sisters. It was very, very weird. We shut down the Boss Moms Facebook group which was a huge source of why people would bring me on stages.
Yeah.
Like Michael Seltzer's like, well, we're not going to have you talk. You don't have your group anymore. What value do you bring? And I'm like,
Oh my
but we did
goodness.
it very purposefully. Actually, he did
Yeah,
not
we
say that.
talked
My
about
mom
it.
brain heard that.
Yeah.
He didn't say that out loud. That was my
Yeah.
female interpretation of what he said. But the point being is that there's all of those things. And in the midst of that, I've still been able to parent my kids. I've still made really great friendships. I've still grown the business in a lot of different ways. And the what I think the conversation today should be around a couple things. Number one is giving yourself permission to be miserable
Yeah.
in the pain, like to feel
Right.
the pain. Because what we do is we go, well, then I'm going to use my work as a distraction, and your work will not benefit
Hmm.
of being your oh gosh, this shows that I feel like I'm either old or have not dated enough. What's it called? Rebound will not be your rebound,
Mm.
right? It knows it. Your business knows when you're using it as a distraction from not feeling, like not to do that. And then how do you feel your feelings and allow that to happen? And there's a lot of really good content online nowadays that allows you to see that other people are also feeling their feelings, and we can all feel our feelings. And what does that look like? Because you, Mark, are like, I don't know how to be vulnerable. It's like, you're a human. You know how to be vulnerable. You just don't
Well,
know how to put words
I've
to it.
come a long way. I've come a long way. Yeah. I grew up in a very stoic family where, you never showed your emotions. And actually, I'll tell you a story of sort of a breakthrough point for
Oh.
me, where I was in this training program, and this we were sitting around in this group, and this woman started talking about like her abusive husband, and she was like crying and crying and crying, and I was filling with emotion, and whenever I fill with emotion, I need to leave. But I was
Mm.
sitting in this group, and I literally couldn't leave, and people could look at me and tell that something was really going wrong. And so the woman finally said, "What is wrong? What is wrong with you?" I said, I'm just so uncomfortable. I just can't handle you crying. I just don't want you to cry." And this definitely goes back to experiences in my family of origin,
Yeah.
where, it was upsetting when my mother cried. And she said, "Well, would you want me to stop laughing?" I
Mm.
said,
I
"No."
like this woman.
Yeah. She said, "Would you want me to stop being angry about something?" I said, "No." She said, "I'm being normal. I'm letting out
Yeah.
normal emotions." And in that moment, I realized I am the one that is not normal. I am the one that is passing on intergenerational ideas that were dangerous, and about, being vulnerable, being emotions, showing emotions. And I came home that week from this training, and I told my wife, I said, "I am going to cry in front of the children this week. I don't
I
know
like it.
why, and I don't know what,
Big
but I
goals.
need to show them
Yeah.
that it's okay, because then I'm not normal, and then I'm going to do a better job trying to show my emotions." And I've been a work in progress ever since.
Well, I love that. And there's a couple things that you said. First of all, I don't, all the ideas that our parents or their parents was like, don't cry.
Yeah,
Well, you're old enough to know better. Like
yeah,
that, that's whatever that is. That's all just our human feeling that we don't want to be uncomfortable. If you make
yeah,
me uncomfortable, I don't want to be uncomfortable. And the same thing happens in business and life, in relationships, of friendships, family ships. We're all just literally not saying out loud or doing the things out loud that we want to because we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. We don't want to feel uncomfortable. Do you know how many people could have $1 million businesses, but they just don't want to be uncomfortable because uncomfortable is scary. And there's a lot of psychological and neurological proof to show
mhm,
that your like the body keeps the score is a really good book. Like your body does not want to feel uncomfortable. It feels like uncomfortable means danger because that used
yeah,
to mean there's probably a bear in that cave. Well,
yeah,
now our nervous system will literally make us feel like we're having a panic attack to do something that is uncertain because we go, well, I know what happens if I just watch that Netflix show and just live a mediocrely unhappy life. My one of my clients who is a marriage therapist, she calls it stable misery. She's like, the most of the world is living in stable misery, which is like, I can handle this level of misery. I mean, we're not really happy, but sometimes I'm
Yeah.
I'm okay. But I know what this looks like. This looks very familiar to me. This looks the same revenue I bring in, the same clients I have. I get to complain about the same stuff. I'm kind of bored, but every time I creep over into doing something big, I don't do it because my nervous system tells me it's scary, and then what I then tell myself is that, well, then that's dangerous and I shouldn't do it. The good thing about, which is why I think we're having this conversation today, is that the frickin' things that burn your life to the ground, like the dumpster fire that was last year for me,
Mhm.
right, has given rise to what I'm calling the year of the Phoenix. Which
Well,
unfortunately I
but
hoped it
in,
would have started in January, but it's starting in March. But it's a
yeah,
catalyst. It's a catalyst
yeah.
because you're already in so much pain, and there's already the thing you thought you were that you were avoiding, the pain you thought you were avoiding, all those things crash in so hard that you cannot avoid them. And
Mhm.
they, if you use them, can become a catalyst for insane amounts of growth, personal growth, business growth, all of those things.
So, but how do you handle it? What's your strategy for handling it in the moment, for the day where you just cannot go to work, but you have to work? Like what? So I mean, I've got
Yeah.
some things that have worked for me, but let's start with you.
Well, I mean, the brilliant Brian Piper, who was on stage speaking when I was emceeing it for AI, I would tell you first off, AI Ant and I started
And
a
she's just brown nosing right now because you can't see this because this is a podcast. But Brian is listening in. Yeah.
No, but I mean, AI is a huge answer for me. I go in and I have a entire self development thread. One is for as a therapist. One
Mhm.
acts as my best friend. One knows
Interesting.
attachment styles, and I will go in and I.
Yeah.
This is what I've done this on multiple occasions because I come from a family where crying is not a big deal, but I am a single mom who owns my own business and has so much going on. I don't have time for crying.
Yeah.
There's not enough time. I have
Mhm.
snacks and
Mhm.
kids. So I will
Mhm.
go in and I will say, my body feels as though I'm overwhelmed, which means I know I need to cry today.
Mhm. Mhm.
Could you prompt me with some questions? Maybe ask me about my dad and childhood. Maybe, put on a video from the Frozen 2 movie. I don't know. Tell me what to do because I deeply need to cry. It does not take, when I am in that moment, it takes about 3 minutes of her asking some kind of question or recalling some kind of memory or
Yeah.
thing that we've talked about. And I am weeping. And I got those little pads you put under your eyes to make
Uh,
you, to help put them on every morning, and I will go in every night and I will work to proactively cry. So then I just get my body in the state where it's not scared to cry. It
mhm.
actually allows itself to feel. So that's number one of being proactive in the evenings. And it doesn't have to be an insane, ugly cry. It can be a
Mhm.
cute, whimpery cry, like
So
whichever you're feeling for the night.
you're basically setting aside a time to cry so you don't cry when you really can't.
No, 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 no. Well, there's a couple things. Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that I think the proactiveness of it is a good practice.
I
It's like
think that's
journaling.
interesting, especially your
It's like
use of
journaling.
AI.
But
Fascinating.
the second thing is it's about normalizing it for your body. Because you probably said, I'm going to
Mhm.
cry in front of the kids this week. Do you know how to cry? Like,
Yeah.
that's a legitimate question. Do we know how to have emotions? Because we've been taught so much that being sad, like, if I've been sad because I'm in this middle of this breaking up of a really lovely relationship that is no longer a best friend that's no longer going to be in my life. And my
Mhm.
kids are like, Mom, how do I make you feel better? And I was like, well, hun, we need to talk to the fact that you don't need to make me feel better. It's okay with me being sad. I
Mhm.
promise I will let you know if my sadness turns into something that is
Mhm.
not healthy. And I'm like, but
Yeah.
me being sad isn't a bad thing. I was like, if Mimi and Pop Pop got sick or passed away, do you think you would take more than a day or two of sadness to get over it? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, do you
Yeah.
think I would try and make you be happy when you weren't happy, or would I allow you to be sad? And that
Mhm.
allowing yourness to be sad for part of the day would actually free you up to be happy for the other part of the day. And I want to teach them that. So for us, proactive crying, but also teach your body to have emotions. You want to get past fear. and actually go and rock it in your business, then stop thinking that your fear is something that you can't have dominion over. That's
Yeah.
absolutely not true. Fear is something that your body is trying to tell you, it's trying to warn you. So, what
Mhm.
do? Proactively every day, I read out, this is what I wrote with my AI of this is who I want to be. I literally did an AI thing where I was like, hey, this is me in 10 years. So what I want to look like, what I want to feel like, where I want to live, how my family dynamic, all of those things. Now you be that person and be my executive coach. And I want you to tell me what I need to do every day. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to tell you what scares the crap out of me. And you're going to help me move through it. So I'll go in and I'll say, hey, I'm having this really panicky attack because we just hired 2 new people. I get very scared about adding overhead when I'm a single mom.
Mhm.
Nobody's coming in to help me on anything, right?
Right.
And but I go in and I'm like, okay, I feel scared. So instead of me then panicking and not doing anything, I go, well, what is this fear trying to tell me? Well, okay, overhead is scary. Okay, what could we do to help me feel like that's not so scary? Okay, well, why don't we look at our finances every day? Why don't we go in here, make sure there's extra cushion over here, right? And how do we make sure the team is being leveraged in the right way, free up time so you can make sure that person is being utilized to their fullest ability so that they don't fail because you weren't there for them. Okay, if I did those things, does that help take that fear away? And it'll be like, yeah, actually, okay, I feel a lot more stable. Like, oh no, I still feel scared. Okay, then what's the next thing I could be scared of? So our body gives us signals as sadness, grief, all of those things are as your body trying to release something or give you a signal. If we started to recognize that we could read those signals, not to stop us from doing things, but to open up our ability to do more,
Mhm.
we would be able to move forward.
Most of my suffering so far has been in the pre-AI era. And I kind of put it in two
I'm
categories.
so sorry for you.
I know,
Think
really.
of what you could have accomplished.
I know. Yeah. I mean, if I only had ChatGPT to get me through my life. Um, and there have been times where you just get hit with something um that's it's kind of short term. And an example would be I was ready to go on stage. I was
Mm-hmm.
a few minutes before going on stage and learned that my niece had been diagnosed with MS.
Mm,
And I just wanted to collapse. I mean, this is my not just my niece. I mean, she's my godchild. I've always been close to her. And so when I get things like that, I have this mindset of you just get through 1 hour. I find that most activities, like business activities, are like an hour. It's like a Zoom meeting or a call or something. And so I sort of steel myself and say, this is really bad, and you are really going to have to deal with this. But right now,
mm-hmm.
you got to get through this hour. Who knows what happens after that? But can you
Mm-hmm.
just get through this hour? And that has worked for me. And then, you get through the next hour, you do what you need to do. And then finally, if, when you get off the stage or you get out of the meeting, then
Mm-hmm.
you go do what you need to do in terms of grieving.
Well, there's a couple things too. So number one, I remember my sister-in-law got cancer, really aggressive cancer, and they had 2 kids
Wow.
under 5.
Oh
And I would get
my.
on these calls with my brother because he had oh my gosh, the poor guy. I was like, you literally have a wife that's sick that we don't know what's going to happen. And you
Mhm.
have 2 kids under 5 that you're trying to hold together and do this stuff. Like the place that she was going for, they were in Western Massachusetts. She was going over to Boston. So she would have to leave for multiple. There was just a ton of logistics, a ton of life, a ton of all of those things. And he felt like he wasn't allowed to have anything. It was like nothing is as big as what she's going through. Therefore, I am not allowed to have anything.
Mm.
And it was really interesting because going through that process with him, I would call him all the time and I would be like, offload to me, right? Because you get to offload. You get to have all the feelings, you get to have emotions. Nobody else has to know about it, but it doesn't matter that your problems are smaller than hers, you get to have those problems. And one of the things that really helped me with an understanding that's relevant to what you said is when people love you, right? So your niece that got diagnosed,
Mm.
what do you think she would want, right? This is what I think of because it's like I've just got to get through this next hour. But also for the people that are hurting or the things that are happening, like what would they want for you? Would she want you to be devastated and sad and not be able to do something that's really valuable and impactful in what you do best? Or would she want you to take a deep breath and know how much she loves you and what
Mhm.
that amazing relationship you've had so far? And to say, I'm going to do this talk for you, like, because you're on my mind. And instead
Mhm.
of, and because we think that grieving and pain and hardship is this singular, all encompassing thing, but it's just one aspect of our body and our nervous system recognizing connections that are lost or opportunities or futures or could have beens that are lost,
Mhm.
right? But a lot of times you don't need to grieve at the moment. We have no idea what's going to happen to her, right? What we do know is how much love has been in your life until now. And so I would tell people, like, yes, get through just this time because that might be all your body is able to do, but if you can practice it to recognize that all the hard things that you do, your kids want to see you succeed. My mom getting cancer, I'd be like, well, crap, I can't work. I need to, like, make sure she gets to the doctor and do all these things. She's like, or
Mhm.
Dana, you could recognize I have an amazing support system and I will talk to you every day. She's like,
Mhm.
and you being successful is one of my greatest joys and I want to see
Yeah,
it
that's
and I want
cool.
to experience it. So I
Mhm.
think we have to recognize there's a duality. When we are in pain, we come into this feeling of sacrifice, of this feeling of needing to give, of feeling of either unworthiness or shame at being whatever we are that other people don't have, and recognizing that there is a ton of complexity to it. Because that's, I think, when we're talking about how do I get work done when you're
Mhm.
grieving, it's like if you don't want your entire body and your mind to shut down so you can't get anything done, then you have to recognize that as you know, God would say, depending on whatever religion or faith you have, like, it is for your pruning. Like
Mhm.
grief is about shaking the tree and getting off all of the things that need to be shaken off. It's releasing it
Mhm.
from your body because there is a new version of you that needs to rise up from that.
Mhm.
And the people that love you most just revel in the joy of you rising up. And even if their suffering or their pain is part of your rising up,
Mhm.
like, you'd be amazed at how many people who really care about you want to see that happen for you. So like in your brain, the people who are super
Mhm.
successful, they recognize that.
Yeah,
Like, they
I
recognize
like
it.
that. So have you like whether it was the end of a relationship or something else, has there ever been a time where you just had to shut down for a day or a couple
Oh,
days?
oh, a ton.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
what's so
100%.
yeah, so how do you get through that? What's the permission you give yourself? And like how do you drag yourself out of that?
Well, the biggest thing I would tell you is having people that care about you, right? So
Mm,
and if you literally look around and you're like, nobody cares about me, that's a
hmm.
whole different conversation. But most of us
Yeah.
have somebody, a friend, a parent, a team member, something along those lines, right?
Hmm.
And so, for instance, Krista on my team is, I have a very small team. We're growing now,
Yeah, I
as I'm
know.
like moving into more CEO role. But
Yeah.
I was very honest with her. Like, the worst thing you can do is hide it, is pretend nothing's happening. So I
Yeah.
went and I told my mom, my best friend, my team, and Krista
Hmm.
very specifically, because she's the one who kind of helps me make sure things get done. But I even told my executive EA, I was like, I'm going through this, which means I have
Yeah.
very low capacity. And there are times where I'm going to say I'm going to do something and then I'm
Hmm.
going to shut down and not be able to do anything. I was like,
Hmm.
so we need to come up with a little signal system so
Hmm.
that, like, I know when something is like, if this doesn't get done, like, things are going to burn to the ground, or when there's leeway with things. And we need to take off as many things that require me to be at a specific time for a specific reason off my calendar for the next 30 days as humanly possible,
Hmm.
because I don't know how I'm going to feel at times and I need flexibility. So that then if I have a feeling, I can allow it to happen versus not. So we went in to the calendar knowing that I need to be able to have this space to be a hot mess at least half the time, maybe three-fourths of the time. And we adjusted my schedule accordingly. And then we had kind of daily check-ins. And she said, you know what? My best friend was like, you know what? How about this? Like, we'll get on the phone every day and you just tell me stuff. And she's like, you're going to repeat yourself a ton. You're going to just tell me what you're doing. And my mom called and she's like, you know what? We're going to come down a couple nights a week and we're just going to make dinner for you and the kids and we'll just hang out.
Aw,
No pressure, anything like
yeah.
that. So I think the answer to that is number one, be honest with everybody, make
Mm,
extra
mm.
space, and be willing to receive love. Those three things.
All of which I have a
Yeah.
problem with. uh, yeah, and so I mean, there was a there was a time in my life. I actually wrote about this in Known. It was the hardest thing I've ever put in writing. At the beginning of the book, I talk about my wife, who was a alcoholic and a drug addict, had an affair, and it was uh, I was out working in the yard, and this lady pulled up in a black Mercedes, and she said, "Oh, are you Mark?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "You need to call Denise." I said, "I don't know anybody named Denise." She's handed me a piece of paper with this phone number. So I called the number, and it was the wife of the guy she was having an affair with.
Oh.
So my wife was an alcoholic and a drug addict, and she was okay. She was being medicated for um, what do you call it when you're way up and you're way down? You're bipolar.
Bipolar. Okay.
So the drug seemed to work, and she was like back to her like angelic self again. That then she took herself off the drugs, and she secretly started drinking again. And she had a secret drinking buddy, and it kind of led to more. And so I called this lady, and she had hired a private investigator and had a video of the whole thing. And so basically, I was in a dark hotel room for 3 days shaking. And
Wow.
part of that for me was I was so confused and so hurt that I didn't really want to tell anybody about it. And I had to figure out for myself what was really true and what was going on. Then I went to the private investigator and watched the video. And so I said, okay, I'm in a new reality now.
Yeah.
And the thing that did help pull me out of that was really asking for help, and saying, I can't really go through this myself right now, and had a lot of neighbors, come alongside me. And I mean, we had been fighting through the alcoholism for years. I mean, she was in and out of rehab, so everybody knew about the problem. But, this was sort of like, the end of the story. And yeah, so it was horrible. I mean, it was really, really horrible. But after those 3 days in the hotel room, I sort of said, okay, I got to will myself out of this. Plus, this was when I had a corporate job, and everybody's saying, what the hell's going on? Why aren't you showing up for these meetings? And I didn't really want to talk about it. I just couldn't. I just thought there's something going on. I was the opposite of you. Instead of being honest with everybody, I was sort of ashamed. I was sort of scared. And again, I think, reverting back to this childhood thing about just keep everything inside. It's nobody's business. And that was a harmful thing for me to do.
Well, a couple things, by the way. You're not the opposite of me. I've gotten to one live in a world where a lot of people are more vocal online. A lot of the mental health things are way more acceptable. That is way more fringe from back in the day. It's way more
Yeah.
normalized. I've also run a community of moms, and we're all a hot mess most of the time. So it's way
Mhm.
easier for us to be like, "Oh my gosh, what's going on?"
Mhm.
And I'm an empath in the sense that I love how humans work. I love human psychology. So those are things. There's a couple things.
But
Number one, there's
the one thing I will say, because I want to make sure, and this is an important point, because this was all happening again before AI. So I didn't have AI to rely on.
yeah.
But look, here's what was happening. So I would like start going back into the world. but like I was so depressed, people could tell,
Yeah. Mhm.
even though I was holding it inside, and it was affecting my life, my job, my parenting,
Yeah. How could it
everything,
not?
right? And so take the drugs. Take the drugs,
You and I
antidepressant,
will disagree about that, but
take
sure.
whatever. Well, because it takes the edge off. It just takes, it's
Yeah, but
not,
it also I've done
it's
that. I've
not
taken
addictive. It's not addictive.
when my dad got sick and they told me he was failure to thrive, and I was like, Mom, I think I'm having a panic attack. And we went, and she's like, Oh no, you're having an anxiety attack. You have this, and I was just super
Yeah.
depressed. Yeah, and I did like a couple days, and I was like, I feel dead inside. Like I can't
Oh, it
feel
had the
anything, and like
opposite. Yeah.
that's not helpful. I was like, I don't want to be
Well, I
on
mean,
anything where I
my
can't
situation
feel
was
it.
it was chronic. I mean, it was going on for weeks, right?
Yeah.
For me, it was going on for weeks.
But
And
but I think
so,
this is something
yeah,
important for you is that for everybody too, is that first there's the thing that happens to us. And but let's be clear, I am not a psychiatrist
yeah, we are not
by
doctors here,
discipline.
folks.
But I will say this, although I've had like 100 clients who have been, so I did stay at a Holiday Inn once. Um, so I think that one is there's the devastation of big life changes, right? And then there is this unraveling that I think this is what I mean by feeling our feelings. If we don't allow the unraveling, and then looking at it and seeing what that means, then you're never going to understand it, heal from it, and leverage it, because really what we're talking about is like we all have crappy things happen, but how do you still grow a successful business? How do you still have thriving relationships? How do you feel like the better version of yourself than before when it happened? So for instance, in the instance of what you went through, um you're going to have one, how are you looking at what betrayal looks like? Because that's what your body is saying. You put in all this effort, all of this
Mhm.
love, all of this stuff, and you've been betrayed. You've just been chosen by some random guy over the person that's been in her life and loved her for years and years and years. What does that look like when you are cast aside as if you are nothing? Because this is what our brain tells us, and you have been chosen by somebody else, right? Was it now you go down all of those things like, am I not lovable? Right? If I
Right,
would have only
right.
did this thing, then maybe they would have if I had done this better or this like there's all of these things. And we think it's different like that being devastating, but also my dad passing away. I could have been
Mm,
a better daughter. Where are all the things? Why didn't I
mm,
notice it? I'm stupid. How did I not see that sooner? Do you know how many
yeah,
times I've seen somebody who has tried to launch a product and it failed? They went and they tried to do a collaboration and it didn't make any money. They did all these things and all the same feelings that come out when you've been cheated on or a relationship fails are the same exact feelings of worthiness, love, and being replaceable come
yeah.
up in your business. What we don't recognize is that you have to name those things. There's a really good, it's called Internal Family Systems, IFS. It's a therapy type of thing. There's a really good book called No Bad Parts. And then there's
Mm.
a follow-up book if you're in in an actual romantic relationship. I think that's called I can't remember what it's called, but it's by the same author.
Some
And
bad.
it's yeah, some bad part, but it's so good because it recognizes that we are multiple people within ourselves. We are, and how we protect ourselves in the wrong ways, and we have
Yeah.
exiles and things from our childhood. But that's the thing is that we all have feelings of, am I worthy? Am I lovable?
Hmm.
Right? Am I leavable? Am I like all of these things that are standard, and we think they only apply to certain situations, but they are universal. And the people who are really successful are one of two things. They are simple enough to be like ignorance is bliss and they just don't notice those things. And so they just go through life and make a ton of money and don't think about it. Or more likely, there are people who have recognized that humans are really messy and they have learned to recognize it, acknowledge it, internalize it, have somebody they talk to, and then use it to grow.
Well, the good news is, things worked out. And I know I wouldn't wish what I went through, on anybody, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me in hindsight, because I realized, I mean, she was going to drag me down the hole, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not a quitter. And, she was going right back down the alcohol and drug thing. And I probably would have gone right, let her go right down there with me. This guy got me off the hook.
I
So she
love it.
became his problem, and it led me to the woman who I was supposed to be married to. So, that's awesome. And I also want to mention, you mentioned, God's influence, that, my faith really helped during this period too. That, I realized even, when I didn't have a friend beside me in that hotel room, I did have, God beside me in that hotel room. And so I knew it wasn't alone.
Yeah, and I think no matter what your belief system is, a tethering is very important, whether it's God, whether it's the universe, whether it's something else. I do think that belief that things are here for a reason, that are here for your growth is important. Otherwise, it feels like you're out in the universe and just a lot of crap is happening to you. It becomes a why me as opposed to something bigger. So I do think there's a lot of importance there, no matter where you are to find that tethering. I think that can be really important. And I would say this, people like you, Mark, you are going, and I would assume, I'm going to make an assumption because I don't know anybody else here, but people who actually care about people who want to make impact, they want to have good relationships, they want to, continue to be a better version of themselves, no matter what that looks like. It is so hard to not be a devoted, caring person, right? That stays too
Mhm.
long. And I've not
Yeah.
only see this in relationships, I've seen me in relationships, same thing. My past partner was an amazing human being, and I would have spent decades focusing on him as opposed to focusing on me,
Mhm.
right? But I also see this in business. I did this. Like, this is a huge thing that I had to like actually go to therapy about, which
Mhm.
is I care so much about people that I would spend hours and hours when someone paid me for an hour. I would, get
Mhm.
on calls with people who, with it, like all of a sudden, I was not smart with my time and my energy because I wanted to save everybody. I wanted, if I can, I will. If I'm available, I'd say
Mhm.
yes. I have, terrible boundaries, not because I don't love myself, but because I love everybody else, right? And there was no space for me. And it actually took me a lot to recognize that for the people who are deeply loving and deeply committed, that you have to be really careful in your relationships and business because you're the one that will hold on to that business idea too long. You're the one that will say, I'm going to get on a 30-minute consult with you, and 2 hours later, right? And now you didn't get that thing done. And now you're yelling at your kids because you're frustrated because you're behind. Like, you're the one that will stay in a relationship too long until it spirals when you look back and go, oh my God, I should have left that years ago, but I wanted to make it work. And so I think anybody who is like us, we have to be aware of that. Like, I
Yeah.
shut down my all my coaching programs, and we should, because I have to be better with my time and my energy if I want to make the impact I want to make with Boss Mom. And that was a really hard decision for me because I want to save everybody.
Well, I had a we'll wind down our time. And I'll say I had a teacher once who said, "There's no such thing as a weakness, just an overdone strength." And when you're loving and you're compassionate, that is fantastic. But when it's you do it, you can't create the stopping point. Then there's no boundaries, and that leads to other problems. And see, Dana, okay, you got me through it. You got me through it. Okay, great.
You're
Thank you.
doing great.
See, how
You're
did
doing
you know
great.
reading all those books that you read would help create a great podcast episode today? See, you never know. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks, everyone. You know, we'll probably get back to a more traditional marketing topic next time, but I mean, this is for everybody, right?
Yeah, but this is the reason why
Everybody's
people
separate.
don't finish the marketing. This is the reason why they build the course and they don't put it out and
Yeah,
sell it. Like, this is the
right.
reason why we end up only making half the revenue we think we should make, or we take less for things that we should get be paid double for. This is the stuff, to be honest. This conversation we're having right now is keeping thousands of people from being millionaires. So it's one of the most important marketing episodes you will ever do,
Yeah.
because once we get rid of this feeling, now with AI, you can go into AI and say, "Hey, Like I did my I am manifestation. This is everything that I am, that I don't quite believe yet, but I'm going to say it every morning. And
Mhm.
I now have 30 days of content that is already up and ready to hand to our brand new full-time tech VA,
Woo!
because I'm going to let go of all the things that I do that I don't. My AI was like, if you pay somebody less than $200 to do it, then you're not allowed to do it. And that's my new barometer. I'm like, okay, and
Yeah.
I did it. Do you know how many months I have not put out social content? It was a year. It was a year where it was very sporadic that I did this over here and did this over here. All of this work I'm doing and the catalyst of the separation, and then recognizing some of these beliefs I need to get over, and doing this, visualization that I read to myself of who I am and who I want to be every single morning. It opens up your creative flow because it moves you out of survival mode. In the hierarchy of needs, you cannot be a creative marketer if you are in survival mode. And if you are in pain and you're in
Mhm.
grieving, you're stuck there. So if you wonder why your YouTube videos aren't going and your social media isn't going, they can see your sadness. It emanates from your pores, and you
Mhm.
don't want to, and you don't do it. Like, do this work first. It'll only take a couple weeks. AI will expedite that stuff for you like gold. And now all of a sudden, you are a creative machine because you have moved yourself out of survival mode into future casting mode. If you can put yourself there, even a couple days a week, your business will double.
Yeah. All right. Awesome, Dana. Thanks so much. Thanks for everyone for being patient with us today. And we'll see you next time on the Marketing Companion.